everyone, and welcome back to The Learning Gardener. We've done a lot of videos lately on the things that are growing in the garden and harvest videos, and the garden has definitely been way more productive than it was last season, which was my first growing season. So I thought I would show you a little bit about how I've been preserving what's coming out of the garden and trying to make sure we make the most of this season. It's a little bit like Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead doing her Every Little Bit Counts challenge, except that there's no way I can or freeze dry or preserve as much food as she does. I don't know how she does half the things she does with 9 children and homeschooling and the garden. I'm just so impressed by her. But I just thought I would take you guys along on the journey. So this year was the first time I got corn from my garden. It was very, very exciting. I think I got about 34 ears altogether, and my mum took some home to Sydney and the rest I blanched and then prepped for the freezer. I prepped them in bags that were roughly about as much as I would use in one cooking recipe. I generally cook for one, but I batch make. So I tend to double or triple recipes and then freeze them so I don't have to cook again. And this year I really tried to focus more on getting the basics. So making sure I have these corn kernels in the freezer, making sure I have capsicum in the freezer, canning just basic diced tomatoes. I've also tried to ensure that we have a harvest for the colder seasons by preserving seeds from the garden. While this might not technically be food preservation, it is preserving the harvests for the future, because seeds saved from this garden are going to produce plants that are more resilient to our climate and to our pest pressure. So hopefully these lettuce seeds will soon produce some lettuce as we move into autumn. It's been a little bit while since I've had some lettuce that germinated. We've had a bit of a rough season for the salad greens, but I did manage to preserve a ton of lettuce seeds and a range of other veggies from the garden. And once they dried out on my dining room table for 2 weeks, maybe 3, I can't remember, I didn't keep count. I bagged them up and labeled them. Some of them were flower seeds. I did save some sunflower seeds and some Aquilegia seeds, and I also saved things like green beans. I've had a freeze dryer now for nearly 2 years, but I haven't actually freeze dried much this year. My first big batch was mostly basil, and basil is one of my favorite things to freeze dry. But I need to focus on getting some other things up into the pantry. So one of the things I have focused on a lot this year was bone broth. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, I was expecting a baby, and bone broth, when you breastfeeding, can apparently increase the production of milk. So I had canned a ton of bone broth, And the other thing is I want to make sure that I am trying to increase my consumption of animal fats, but I don't actually like eating animal fats in cooked meat. It texturally just doesn't agree with me. So I always make sure I preserve the tallow that comes off the bone broth, and I use that to, say, cook my roast potatoes in. And the fat from animal meat actually has apparently great health benefits, including lots of amino acids. So that's what I'm actually doing here in this video. But I also preserve a lot of bone broth this year because I got about 50 kilos of beef bones for free, and I just want them out of the freezer at this point. The other thing that I used the freeze dryer for this year was to preserve the abundant harvest I got of cucumbers. So I decided to make a bunch of cucumber chips. Most of them were just salt. I have made one batch that was garlic and salt, and I think I might have slightly overdone the garlic, but I am yet to taste it, so I can't actually report back at this point about how they turned out. But in previous years, the cucumber chips are a great alternative to regular store-bought chips that are full of chemicals. At least I know where the cucumbers have come from. I know that they haven't been sprayed with anything. That being said, I mean, I don't think I got enough cucumbers this year. Certainly haven't freeze-dried enough of them to get me through a year's worth of chip requirements. But it's going to be interesting to see how the garlic ones turn out, because the freeze dryer does intensify some flavors sometimes. So hopefully they will turn out all right. But I do love garlic, so I'm inclined to think that even if the garlic is a bit intense, I might still like it. Hopefully I do. This season has also been one of my best for sweet peppers or capsicums, and that is because of this particular sweet yellow capsicum that I got from the hardware store. All of the plants that I planted have been prolific, although now they're being very much affected by a fruit fly, so even when I cut into some of these, there were little fruit fly larvae grubs in some of them, so I couldn't save all of them. But this is definitely the best year for capsicums for me because I actually got some. Most of the time, your regular sweet pepper or capsicums will get sunburn or just fall off and get damaged before they become fully mature. And these ones actually have done really, really well. So I was really stoked to get some preserved. I just diced them up and bagged them in individual silicone not silicone bags, I ran out of silicone bags for this, but just individual Ziploc bags. And this will mean that when I come along to a recipe that needs some capsicum, I've already done the work of dicing it up, and it's just so much easier to do it all in one sitting. And it might be annoying to do at the time, but future me really appreciates the efforts of past me when I come to use these products. other thing I've been preserving in freezer bags is the cherry tomatoes. So I go through and make sure there's no cracked ones, none that have been bitten by fruit fly, and I remove any green stems. And then once they're ripe, I just make sure they're washed and pop them in bags and freeze them whole. At some point, I will make a sauce or something from this, but I just didn't have time to deal with them at the time, and I didn't want to waste beautifully ripe cherry tomatoes. The cherry tomatoes I've planted this year are just a standard cherry tomato and a Valentine tomato. They have been absolutely prolific. I really love the Valentines. They're also great for school lunches. My best friend's been using a lot of them for that purpose. I also have been working on slowly peeling my garlic harvest from earlier this year and getting it in the fridge. I find that the homegrown garlic, especially when it was fresher from the harvest, was actually quite difficult for me to peel in large doses. Not because garlic is annoying to peel, which it very much is, but because I was actually getting like a stinging, burning, borderline contact dermatitis from it, because the garlic, particularly in the New Zealand red variety, was so much more potent than store-bought garlic. So I've just been doing sort of 2 or 3 heads of garlic at a time, and just slowly making my way through what I have still stored from my earlier harvest a couple of months ago. And to be honest, I'm surprised it's lasted so long, because we've had very humid weather. It's been very, very hot, and we don't have things like basements and things like that that can be used as pantries. The other thing I've tried for the first time this season is canning just diced tomatoes. It was a really simple process, but it was a great way to preserve a ton of tomatoes, and it turned into a lot more than I thought it would. I was using mostly mortgage lifter tomatoes, but some beefsteak, because these are the ones that have ripened first. My Romas are not quite at the point of ripening, and the same with my Amish paste and San Marzanos, and hopefully as they come into season, they will not be too affected by fruit fly. So far, these tomatoes were all undamaged, which I was a bit surprised about, because there were a few funky looking ones that had some interesting marks on their skin. Some were sunburnt, but there were some that had these marks on them that made me wonder if they'd been bitten by a fruit fly. Like you can see these little patches on this tomato. But I didn't find any evidence of fruit fly larvae in the internal part of the tomato, and I really checked as I was dicing these guys up. So I'm hoping that I will still have a heap more tomatoes to come out, because I would like to can some more marinara sauce, which I used a lot of last year, which was a recipe I got from Laura from Garden Answers videos. That was where I first saw it. And I would like to freeze dry a ton of tomatoes this year. I did freeze dry some last year, but not a lot. So I've been using my freeze dried tomatoes conservatively. But I like to use them when I'm making, say, a zucchini lasagna, to absorb some of the liquid from the zucchini and to add extra tomato flavor. I love to add it to bolognese because it thickens the recipe a bit faster. It's just really nice to have freeze-dried, oh, it's a luxury, to be honest, to have freeze-dried tomato paste, but I would like to have a little bit more of that. It's a great flavor adder, and sometimes I do some diced tomatoes and freeze-dry them too. Haven't used that as much as powdered tomato, so I definitely need to get onto that, but I am waiting for the next batch of ripe tomatoes now that I have dealt with this massive amount of tomatoes. So, I mean, the whole idea behind the Every Little Bit Counts challenge, if you've ever watched Three Rivers Homestead, is that you're not doing these big batches, which, to be honest, this batch of tomatoes was a big batch to process and took a few hours. You're just doing little bits every day on the regular to add up over time to quite a bit of food to be preserved. I try to do that, but I do find it a little bit difficult because just because of the way my life is at the moment and the things that are going on. So I haven't been able to practice doing something every single day. I've been more focusing on trying to build the garden and get a lot of jobs around the house done. And I am a bit more inclined to do these larger batches of canning in the event that I'm canning. Although, apart from the bone broth, this is the first thing I'm canning for the season. But I do think that if I can get a little bit better at processing things a little bit faster, my fridge will be a little bit emptier, and I've got a lot of other things to work on, like beets and stuff like that. And I just need to keep pushing to try and maximize the things I've got put away for the cooler season that came out of the garden in summer. But I do love the idea of Jessica's. Definitely check out the channel at Three Rivers Homestead and support their amazing family. And I just hope you guys have enjoyed seeing a little bit of what I've been doing with the things we've been taking out of the garden. I've still got a lot to learn for food preservation and to maximize the harvest, and just in terms of the ways I prefer to preserve the things that come out of the garden. Like, do I like frozen beets versus freeze-dried beets? So much more experimenting to do, and hopefully you guys will come along with us on this journey. I so appreciate you spending time with us. Thank you so much for watching.